We got you covered.
Got me till 11.
Okay.
I go, you go. So,
We'll call you to 10:59.
Oh, I hear they're making budget cuts, Tony.
And we are now.
I know. I'm in the front line.
Thank you. All right, it's 9:04 a.m. We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. If Polly, you can do the roll call, please.
Okay, we are gonna go in order of the agenda. So when I call your name, can you please confirm that you are in attendance? Tony Royster,
Here.
Paul Gerard sitting in for Matt Zabo,
Present.
Petty Santos sitting in for Holly Walcott,
Here.
Shauna Janeway sitting in for Gina Igualier,
Here.
Chad Boggio,
I'm here.
and Lisa Palombi.
Here.
It is a quorum.
Okay, thank you so much. So we'll move on to the public comments. Do we have any public comments? From anybody in the room or online?
For anybody who is in attendance, if you could come to the room with your if you come to the room with your speaker card, or those who are attending virtually, if you could press *9 on your phone to be put in the queue. Seeing none and hearing.
Okay, thank you. So we can move on to the minutes from which one was this? From the March 7th meeting. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. We can do a roll call to approve the minutes.
Sure, we're going to go in the same order. So Tony, your vote.
Aye.
Tony votes aye. Paul, your vote.
Aye.
Paul votes aye. Petty, your vote.
Aye.
Petty votes aye. Shauna, your vote.
Aye.
Shauna votes aye. Chad, your vote.
I'm gonna abstain. I was not here.
We would need a quorum to be able to.
And I vote
pass
aye.
the Item.
I would like to change my vote to aye.
Okay. Chad votes aye. And Lisa, your vote.
Aye.
Lisa votes aye. It's unanimous. The motion passes.
Thank you. Moving on to the next item is committee report 2427, the trust fund report.
Okay, me and Maria Gomez are going to present this report. This is our annual trust fund report. So the JLMBC is the authority over the benefits trust fund. I give authority over the expenditures, and under the ad code, there is a requirement that a status report goes forward to the council each year to say the status of the fund. It is a trust fund which does not have a strong revenue source. We really borrow money or transfer money from the general fund to be able to pay the obligations, but it's trust fund to make sure that the benefits that this program provides have a secure source to be able to pay all those obligations. In attachment A of this report, there is a breakdown of how the fund performed over the past fiscal year. So it had a starting balance of $24 million in July of 2023. The revenues and expenditures are listed there on the top of the sheet with a closing balance of 16 million as of June 30th, 2024. As in our regular fiscal year, not everything is done nice and neatly within that fiscal year. We have obligations that continue past the fiscal year for that fiscal year. So our post activity is identified in the next section. There is additional revenue and expenditures, additional $15 million of revenue and additional $18 million of expenditure that are expected to be taken during this time. And we also have some liabilities that are still out there. This employee refunds is that employee refund project that we had ongoing one for 15 plus years of trying to give employees back money from 2010, 2006, somewhere around there. We still have a number of employees that we haven't been able to identify. We've also had employees that have chosen that they don't want to pursue the refund, but we have to hold that balance as a liability in case they change their mind later on. And then our wellness program information. So everything that's been deposited in the wellness program are expected interest there as well. And then the fund is required to have reserves. So we had that set at 12.5%. So the ending net balance with these projections is 1.5 million.
Thank you.
If the committee approves this item today, it does need to go to council. It is required to go to council within 90 days of the fiscal year close, so by September 1st. And this is the report in attachment B that would be signed by the chair and co-chair to be able to be submitted to council for. Maria and I are happy to answer any questions.
Okay, Thank you.
One, if I might, I'm just curiosity. Why would somebody who's owed a reimbursement or refund for something elect not to take it? Doesn't make any sense to me.
So we do have to have a good amount of paperwork for them to identify. It's really just an attestation.
Okay.
Sometimes though, it might be the next of kin that has to do the attestation and prove their relationship to that individual. And sometimes they just don't want to do the paperwork to do it.
Okay.
The value of the refund, $20, $40 isn't worth their effort, is what they tell us.
Understood. Thank you so
Mhm.
much.
And may I ask, so is this report typical? Does anything jump out at you? Is this what we see typically from year to year? The balance is,
I mean, these figures fluctuate a lot. We are seeing, our costs are increasing, premiums are increasing with medical substantially, so we see these numbers rise. And our net balance ends up going a little bit lower. But nothing is alarming necessarily in this structure. We've had the same funding report for years and years and years. So these are somewhat in line year after year.
thank you.
Thank you. Do I have any more questions?
No, but I'd like to make a motion that we receive and file the report and approve the draft report for the city council consideration.
Second.
All right, thank you. We can do the vote.
Okay, we're gonna go in the same orders, same order. So Tony, your vote.
Aye.
Tony votes aye. Paul, your vote.
Aye.
Paul votes aye. Hetty, your vote.
Aye.
Hetty votes aye. Shauna, your vote.
Aye.
Shauna votes aye. Chad, your vote.
Aye.
Chad votes aye, and Lisa, your vote.
Aye.
Lisa votes aye. It's unanimous. The motion passes.
Thank you. We can move on to the next item, committee report 2428 on the HRP update.
Okay, so this is a very short report as an update of what happened and where we're at with the ongoing conversation of the change to Workday. So when we last came to the committee, we told you that our file feed between the city and the vendor TELUS is not really ready. It still has a lot of work to be done. And we wanted to suspend the hours rule for city employees because we weren't certain that we'd be able to get hours correctly over any other data, and we don't want to negatively affect employees. Nothing has really changed substantially since then over the period of the past, I think we're on cycle 3 now of the new system. The file that went live when we transferred over to Workday had a lot of problems with it. It took us quite a while of going back and forth just to get data to populate on the file. And just to give a little bit more background, we did a lot of testing as we reported this committee before, a lot of testing. I think we reported, the testing environment was not necessarily the best case scenario. It was a static one pay period that we tried to make adjustments to, so it wasn't a great representation of what happens in normal ongoing payroll cycles with tons of changes happening. But even with that factor kind of put to the side, a lot of the programming and testing that we did just didn't translate over to production. There's lots of different answers that I got as to why that was the case, but it took us quite a while of trying to just get data to populate on the file. And we are still in the position of trying to make sure the data is correct. So the last file that we transmitted has 50,000 employees on it. Less than half of them actually had hours. We know, without even having to look at anything, that's not right. So it's been an ordeal trying to go back and forth in making sure that we can make corrections with the file. Now that we're live in production, we are testing essentially live data, which is volatile. It changes every time we reproduce a new test file to look at. It is a lot of data on that file. So it's been a very difficult thing for us to check. We're also experiencing, hiccups in payroll processing, in making sure that our payroll transactions are being loaded correctly, that they are not being touched by anybody other than us, and that we can have full control over everything. So it's been a long work in progress that we're still struggling to maintain. So without going to too much further detail on this, but I'm happy to talk about any questions at all. We can talk about everything in this report, although it's very short. We are recommending that we extend the eligible hours rule for the next 2 months. So giving us the full month of August, the full month of September to be able to troubleshoot this issue and not negatively affect employees. What we are doing in this process is manually updating information into the telesystem. So the data gets essentially quarantined into a test environment. We run some preliminary tests on it, and then we try to manually manipulate that file and load it in the system to be able to create actions. This way, employees aren't negatively being affected, and so we aren't, hopefully, we aren't ending people's benefits that shouldn't be in. But it is a manual process that is prone to error. We're trying to, as best we can, manually identify people that need a new hire offer, manually identify people that are terminated that need to be terminated, and not affect anybody else negatively. But it is prone to error since it is a human review of a massive amount of data. We're going to continue that process until we can feel comfortable that the data on the file is accurate and being sent over accurately. The other piece that we talked about previously was the concept of not being able to bill people or not being able to understand deductions not taken. The only good news that I can say in this process is the end result, although there were hundreds of people that did not get a paycheck on the first round of cycle. Out of that, it was about 400 or so employees that were LA Well members that did not get a paycheck and that had deductions not taken. We saw that was on the first pay period. On the second pay period, I believe it was around 300 or so, about 200, so almost half. Also, we're in the same boat where they got an emergency check, where deductions weren't taken, and we need to take those. So that is within our realm of control, what we normally do, especially since we're suspending the hours rule and we don't have to bill subsidy to anybody. So just billing deductions that were taken from that group of 400 plus people, since there's some repeats there, is completely within our staff's ability to do, and we're prepared to move forward. So we're not requesting or asking to consider a premium holiday again. We still have that report back on that, which is going to come subsequently, but that's no longer recommendation. That is pretty much where we are in this position at this moment. So is there any questions from what we've talked about so far?
I do.
Yeah, go ahead.
Is there a, by suspending the hours, the minimum hours eligibility rule, that just means that they're gonna go ahead and receive their benefits even if they went below the minimum, some people, and it could be a small number, big number, we don't know. Okay.
Correct. And so, well, before this happened, we would typically have a few hundred people each pay period not meet hours. Lots of times it's people that go on leave and just don't have a protected leave, or maybe they're a half an employee that doesn't have their schedule worked out where they meet that requirement. But we would have a few hundred always in that position where we would bill subsidy. So what we're saying is that we would not, or what we're doing in this position is that we would just honor them as they actively were working, even though they didn't, and continue their benefits for this period of time. So it's a cost of the city for continuing to provide a benefit to that particular type of individual. And it may be something that may be difficult for them to understand if they do not come back to working hours. When we do reinforce the rule, it's going to be an education moment, especially if we're going on for 3 months if this continues. But I will say, for a point of reference, that 50,000 or 50,000, that 50% issue that we identified for the hours, when we processed it through, we had 8,000 employees that were identified as not qualified based on hours alone. So for us to piece through out of that who actually did qualify versus who didn't is not really something we can fathom.
Do we anticipate what the cost would be because we've extended?
Try to look at that. It's too hard to tell based off of our still learning how to use the system and the reports that can and can't come out of it at this moment in time. We cannot at this moment in time identify an accurate hours report. So the problem that we have with hours is kind of shows up as a lump sum on a lot of payroll. We don't consider overtime hours. We don't consider retro hours. Somebody didn't get or made an adjustment, like maybe they used BC when they're supposed to use SK, and so that's an adjustment. It still shows up as a positive 8 hours, but we should not be honoring that. So it's hard for us to parcel out the actual hours that applied to working status during the pay period versus the overall hours on the paycheck. So we haven't figured that out yet. And without figuring that out, we don't know the overall financial impact.
Right.
Before COVID, when we looked at just like the halftime population, because actually during COVID, we had this moratorium kind of thing happen also for our halftime population during COVID. And for that group alone, it was about $90,000 a day period to be able to continue them when they weren't working. That was a different scenario because they couldn't work for the most part because of COVID restrictions.
But you will be able to eventually figure out the cost impact.
Yes, I'm not sure when, but we would be able to once we can get some better data.
Assuming that somebody's extended benefits that they wouldn't otherwise qualify for because of the inability of the system to tell you, how will that be treated when you're able to discern that? What happens to the employee afterward?
So once we would be treating them under this temporary suspension as they were actively employed. And so once we stop that suspension, we would be.
I'm sorry, I wasn't clear. I understand that you'll correct it on a go-forward basis, and there maybe some expectation that and not a lack of understanding about why they're not really entitled to benefit. I'm talking about the time of period where they were extended benefits, and the city discovers, hey, without our error, you know, will the city attempt to recover?
Not for this period. For any period the JLMBC agrees to suspend the rule, we will not try to recover for that.
Okay, that was my question.
The only thing we recover is deductions not taken because we would not let them continue benefits without paying their share if they had something that was supposed to.
No, that's understandable.
But we would not, suspending the rule, it would be essentially a freebie for this period of time. Once the rule ends, then they would get a notice saying, hey, you don't qualify according to our rules and you're going to be billed subsidy. And if you pay your subsidy, then your benefits continue. If you don't, then we'll cancel.
Okay, understood.
Was there a science in picking September 21 or I mean, I know that's the end of a pay period. It's only 4 pay periods away.
Not too much of a science, really. It doesn't look like we're going to be quick at wrapping up this, so we need a little bit more time. And that matches up with us being able to report back at the JLMBC if we need to continue further.
October 3rd.
Yeah. So without having to call a special or anything else, if we needed to, if for some reason we weren't able to get to resolution by that point and needed to extend, that would meet up nicely.
And you would rather have that time frame and ask for an extension on top of that as opposed to having a longer time frame and cutting it short if you fix the problem sooner?
It's a good question. I think it's one of those things. What we're trying to look for and prepare for is when the rule does end and we get potentially hundreds or maybe more than hundreds of individuals that we're sending notices to that you no longer qualify. It's easier for us to be able to tie to an action. This is why the rule ended, or this is why the situation ended. So it's cleaner if we have a date on a piece of paper. It doesn't need to be that way though.
And it doesn't, because from my perspective, I mean, we're just listening. We don't put all the work into this. You're the ones who have to go through the process of either reporting or, you know, figuring it out. From my perspective, I think this is probably the most important issue in underpayments in Workday is the loss of benefits. Which is, and Larry's in the audience, which is the thing that we talked about at the very first discussion we had when we found out that 420 PSRs were not going to get paid. So I'm just putting a friendly.
You can have two. You have option 1 that you can exercise, which is give you the time now. If you need option 2, then you can exercise that if you need.
I mean, I think.
Because it's best to
yeah.
have more time than not enough.
Right, reporting back on October 3rd is great, but for me, I would rather you have a little more flexibility to extend that time period if you need to, because, I mean, I sit through hypercare meetings every day, except today, because it's at 9 o'clock. So I'm absent from the one today, but I'll be on the one tomorrow, even when I'm not here. And they're going, but the problems are not solved immediately. And my concern is that 4 pay periods is not a long time period. That's the end of hypercare for workday. We're gonna be basically on our own after that, equipped, but maybe not totally equipped to get where we need to be. And even if it's a few people, that's concerning. So I would respectfully give the floor leeway to extend that date, but report back to us with an update so that you have a little more flexibility. That's just me.
If I might, is it possible just to set a date that's farther out for September? And if you don't need the time, then you don't need it. And then,
Yeah.
we're not burdened with having to come back and have this on the agenda. And I mean, your insight as to how long things are taking to become fixed. You know, we should use that information that Paul has, so.
We can, if the committee wants to entertain continuing it through whatever period seems most reasonable, we continue through the end of the calendar year, continuing it through.
I would rather I'd rather give the personnel department the leeway to continue it through the calendar year, but report back to us. And, with updates, and if we're at the point where we don't have this issue any longer, then built into that through the end of the calendar year is we can stop.
Mhm.
You can stop it immediately when you feel that it's stable, and then make the announcement. And then, yeah, great, put it as an update item on the October 3rd agenda. No action needs to be taken from us. You've got the authority. And because I think it's the most sensitive issue that we have right now.
It also allow, people who are responsible for making the corrections, the triage, and not have this as a pressure point for September 6th, pending our decision, so.
Yeah, and on that point, I mean, I don't want to give us a pass in fixing the problem.
No.
But I certainly don't want us to rush in to try to fix the problem and create more problems. So I want to make sure that the Workday folks, ITA, the controller's office have the time they need to do this correctly. But if it takes longer to do it correctly, it's for the long-term benefit. So I would move an amendment to the recommendation on item B, that the September 21st, 2024 date be changed to coincide to the end of the last pay period in the calendar year of 2024, which I believe is, I thought I had that on my head. December 20.
Favorite calendar.
I gotta look at the calendar.
It would be just, think it's December 28th. Is the last day of the end of the last pay period in 2024. Pretty sure.
I would second that.
Sounds good. Well, we've
So what's
got a-
the financial implications of that? Is 90,000, that number that you threw out for what happened during COVID, is that like worst case scenario in this case?
It's hard to say. We can't tell right now if it's
Yeah.
higher than that or lower than that.
This is not money, it's about.
But it's not like hundreds and hundreds of thousands more than that, right?
It's hard to say.
It's hard to say.
You don't screw up.
We will be able to, I'm optimistic that we'll be able to have that financial kind of estimation when we come back to October meeting.
Okay, if there's no more questions, we do have a motion and a second, so we can go ahead and do the roll call vote.
Okay,
Oh, yes.
And just to confirm, this is a motion for all three items with a modification to the second, extending the timeline to December 28th. That's equal change.
Yes, recommendations A and C as they stand with the modification to B.
Then we'll go ahead in the same order of the vote. Tony, your vote.
Aye.
Tony votes aye. Paul, your vote.
Aye.
Paul votes aye. Petty, your vote.
Aye.
Petty votes aye. Shauna, your vote.
Aye.
Shauna votes aye. Chad, your vote.
Aye.
Chad votes aye. And Lisa, your vote.
Aye.
Lisa votes aye. It's unanimous. The motion passes.
Thank you. Moving on to informational item number 6, committee report 2429 on the open enrollment communications.
Morning, this is Ted Vasquez. I'll be presenting this committee report 2429. The report provides an overview of the 2024 open enrollment communications campaign for plan year 2025. The staff is planning and developing our communications plans and materials for 2024 open enrollment and working closely with our third-party administrator TELUS to program our employee portal and our record-keeping system with all the 2025 updates, premiums, and rates. So on page 1, we do have a background and timeline that provide an outline of our 2024 OE season. Currently, we're in the development stage of all of our OE materials and an overview of our campaign at this time. At the bottom of page 2, we have our OE announcements, including postcards, worksite posters, and citywide emails. 2 postcards will be mailed to all city employees, one in late September announcing the start of the OE season, and then the second in late October reminding employees of the upcoming OE deadline. And throughout the month, we'll be sending periodic citywide emails to communicate important information, reminders, and different deadlines. Our open enrollment package will include the Allywell Enrollment Guide, a personalized benefit statement for each employee, and a highlights guide insert. And these will be ready for release by the end of September so that employees do have them in hand on October 1st when OE begins. On page 3, our OE educational resources begin with our open enrollment webpage at keepingallywell.com. It serves as an on-demand resource for all things open enrollment, including topical videos, electronic versions of our guides, and links to the Benefit Central portal where employees can make their OE elections online. We're also planning for a few in-person walk-in information sessions during the lunchtime hours during the month of October. Allywell providers are planned to be available to answer benefit questions or provide additional resources, and we're still working on these dates and locations. Those will be to be determined. On page 4, our front counter service at the Employee Benefits Division office continues to be available for walk-in and in-person services, though employees are strongly encouraged to make appointments for either that in-person, phone, or virtual visit for the best experience. In addition, we do have member advocates from our city's health plans that will continue to be available for one-on-one virtual visits. We also do have an update for our 2 new Allywell provider changes for 2025, beginning at the bottom of page 4. Yep, right there. And so as a reminder, at its May 2nd, 2024 meeting, JLMBC recommended that AmeriFlex be selected as the administrator of the Allywell programs healthcare flexible and dependent care spending account services. And then at its May 16, 2024 meeting, JLMBC recommended that MetLife be selected as the provider of the Allywell program's basic and supplemental employee and dependent life insurance services, short and long-term disability insurance services, and the accidental death and dismemberment insurance services. So staff is working with each of these providers providers to ensure that general information about these benefits provided to LA is correct and accurate in all of its communication materials, and that the information is consistent across any microsites or web pages. And just to ensure that employees have a really clear understanding of these changes, staff are planning to develop a series of personalized, targeted communications that will directly apply to specific changes of an employee's benefits or confirm how a particular benefit will continue. And we are still evaluating how to best develop these items in a way that is efficient and engaging for each recipient. And the current areas there are listed on page 5 of what the groups that we would be targeting. And that does conclude this overview report, and we're happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Do I have any questions from the committee? Actually, I have a couple. Regarding the enrollment, communicating that to the service providers and doing the enrollment online, does the HRP change affect that in any way? Is there?
I'll take that one, Ted. We hope not. So we're taking a big, so in this process, what happens every year, we go through a setup period, which is what we're doing right now, of getting the system programmed. And then the month of September is pretty much testing before we release everything. And in the beginning of September, we freeze everything. And that's how we make the offer. So what your employment status is, what your salary is, what your age is, as of September 1st is how we calculate your open enrollment offer. So we're trying really hard to make sure that we can have accurate data in the third-party system that reflects what the employee actually is as of that date. We think we're going to get there.
Okay.
That's it.
Okay. I'm kind of processing that a little bit. So how are you planning for the possibility that it's in some way not accurate and somebody then makes their elections based on what turns out later to be an incorrect offer, and then they come back and say, well, I would have done a different enrollment if I'd known this, maybe it costs more or costs less or what have you, but what is
we can
there?
own administrative error, and we should be owning administrative error. So if we proposed a rate on their enrollment sheet that said they made $100,000 a year, but they really made 150, whatever the scenario is, that's our error that we should be able to fix, and we can fix. We are going to depend on employees to check their information and ask us or point out like, hey, this doesn't look right. That happens every year. We do try to make sure that they're checking and agreeing or challenging whatever their status is. But we are trying to do everything we can to make sure that it is as accurate as possible from the beginning. I think this year does have an additional piece of challenge because the system may have some discrepancies on its own to those points. So we do have to take that into consideration, and we will be trying to document anything we can if we do find an error. But it is important, I think, for the most part, that employees are understanding what the system is creating, or not this system particularly, but where we are in this particular phase of transitioning everything, and hopefully taking an extra look at what they see when they get their offer.
Okay.
Is the September 1st date publicized?
Yes. Well, it's published on the actual statement that we produce. So it's not as clear. There's a lot of words on that statement, right? It's like 8 pages long, and then even longer if you have a lot of defendants. So it is on the second page, I think, or so. It says this is your class, your age, and your salary as of September 1st.
Is it possibility that September 1st can be highlighted?
Yes.
Yep, we can try.
Yeah.
We have tried, we're in the process of trying to make some changes to this document to make it a little bit, we always try to make improvements every year.
Yeah.
So we can try to make that sound a little stronger, and we can also said maybe we should be putting that in some of the email communications as well, just to clarify and to bring more attention.
So to Tony's point,
Oh.
before Workday went live, we were advising employees, labor organizations, anyone who would listen, tell everyone to grab your pay slips well in advance of the go live period, because that information is there. Today, I can go into the system and I can see who I am. 2 weeks from now, in a new system, I'm not so sure I can tell you what was going on 2 weeks prior. So giving employees an opportunity or advance notice, let's say in mid-August, hey, in 2 weeks, I want you to go in on September 1st, find out all these details, print it out for yourself or write it down, because a month later, you're going to get your open enrollment material, and this open enrollment material is going to be based on that month prior. So just to facilitate that information gathering, because the system's new, people are still trying to navigate, really not sure how to get backwards, how to figure out exactly a point of time. So if you could advertise that, in advance, maybe in the next few weeks, and say, in preparation for open enrollment, go check your status in the system during the pay period of September 1st and find out the details. These are the things that we rely on to calculate what you're going to be offered. You might want to jot them down or print them out so that you'll have them and you can double check and make sure that we're accurate.
Yeah. Is that also, to that point, is that also mentioned on the posters? You mentioned there's worksite posters. Is that maybe mentioned on there? Because I know not everybody has an email, but,
Ted shaking his head no, do you want to?
okay.
Oh.
Okay.
Yeah, no, that's not mentioned on there. It's just kind of like a date announcing, the open enrollment period, but that date is not listed there.
Okay, thank you. Also, this is a little bit different from what we've done before, but is it possible for me, and I don't know if the other unions feel this way, but want to have a copy of the worksite poster to post at the union hall? Because we do have members come through and, on the off chance that there's somebody who comes through and goes, oh yeah, I didn't see that at my work site, or maybe they don't go into their work site, or they don't see their email, they didn't look at their email, whatever it is. But just any kind of way we can get eyeballs on this information is a good thing. So is it possible for us to get a copy of a worksite poster?
Yes, we
Place
could
it-
definitely send that to you, yeah.
Okay,
Mhm.
thank you so much. And if we could get the schedule of the in-person events, that would be great, just to help.
Okay,
In any kind
Yeah.
of way that we can help publicize and get some information out, that would be great. Thank you.
I have one last question. So the items listed on page 5 that are going to be the targeted communications, are any of them vulnerable to HRP data problems? Or is that all information you already have on a separate platform that won't be affected?
That's a good question. This list that we have so far, I don't think there's a huge impact towards HRP data. It is strongly by what they are enrolled into and what we have in the third-party system. I'm trying to think if there's an impact. I'm not foreseeing one necessarily.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. If well, I guess we don't really have to make a motion because it's just informational. So is there any other comments? Okay. Thank you. So appreciate that. We can move on to committee report 2430 projects and activities.
Good morning, JLMBC members. This is Chung with Employee Benefits, and I will be going over this report with you. First up on page 1, we have an update regarding a health equity data breach. So back in March, Health Equity became aware of a systems anomaly involving one of their business partners. Based upon their investigation, it was discovered that there were some unauthorized access or disclosure of certain information. Since then, they have taken steps to address the incident and also to improve their process and systems. And they will be notifying the 24 city participants that were affected by this breach. Okay. Moving on over to page 2, we have an update on the 2025 OE planning. Staff at the LAWell, TPA, TELUS Health, and the benefit providers are all continuing work on preparing for open enrollment. This includes working to update the plan designs, documents, implementing the changes to the benefit system as well as the member portal, and also in developing the communication plan, of which was just discussed earlier by Ted. Next up, we have an update on the ad hoc medical plan subcommittee. As previously reported, a medical plan RFI was issued earlier this year, and responses to the RFI were due on June 14th. We received responses from Aetna, Anthem, Blue Shield, HealthNet, Kaiser, and United Healthcare. Staff and a team from Keenan are in the process of reviewing the responses, of which the details will be shared in an ad hoc subcommittee report with the JLMBC at a future meeting. Down over on page 3 is the, on page 2 is an update regarding the 2024 U.S. Census Medical Survey. This is an annual survey that is sent by the U.S. Census Bureau each year. The survey collects data on a number of medical related items, including health insurance plans for both active and retired employees, premiums, employer and employee contributions, etc. Staff is working with LACERS to complete the survey. And lastly, we on page 3, we have a staffing update. We currently have one position vacant, and that is the HIPAA compliance officer that was just recently approved. We will begin work soon on filling this position. And that brings us to an end of this report. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have, and also to take any items for future, take any future items you would like for the calendar.
Thank you. Do we have any questions from the committee? Nope. Okay. All right, hearing none. All right, thank you. That's pretty much it. Do we have a request for any future agenda items? No? Okay, so we do not have a meeting September 5th. Our next meeting is October 3rd. Thank you very much. 9:46. We're adjourned. Thank you.
I'm back.
Yeah.
Family will be happy.